This is episode 62 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. Welcome to episode 62 of the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. And I hope you are enjoying your time at home with family and friends and making the best of this time. I've been talking to a lot of people who are trying to make this time productive. And whether that be creating a social media presence, whether that be studying your areas better, there's always something you can do to be ready to take advantage of an opportunity when it comes. Please keep in mind that when times are tough, those are the times where people actually tend to get really, really wealthy. If you're in a position now to take advantage of an opportunity, it might just come along. Right now, I'm patiently waiting and watching the market. I'm learning more about what's going on, and I will certainly be making offers on properties if I see an opportunity to buy something that I'd be happy to keep for 20 years plus. That would be my main caveat is if I'm going to be buying, I'm buying for the long haul. I'm buying stuff that I don't really care where the value goes, as long as I know that there's significant cash flow there. And I like my economics in my market. That's not my advice to anyone. That's just what I do. And I thought I'd share that with you. Today's episode is going to be absolutely awesome. I've got investor girl Britt, Instagram phenom, that is doing her own renovations in her own houses. She started at 18. She does everything herself. She buys houses in Saskatchewan, Canada, and renovates them. She's bought houses for $25,000, $28,000, $40,000, legitimately stuff you could buy on a credit card. And she's buying them, renovating them, and some of them don't even have mortgages and they just cash flow for her. She's managed to acquire 13 doors so far, and she's become independently wealthy in that she does not need to work anymore. Now this is all a passion project. She loves to document her work. And if you haven't already, I'd highly recommend that you check her out on Instagram at investorgirlbritt. I've also included a link to that in the show notes of this episode. Without further ado, I'm going to just take you right into today's episode number 62 with Investor Girl Britt. Hello and welcome to the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast. I have Brittany Arnason. Is that it right?
You said it right. Good job.
Also known as Investor Girl Britt, more popularly known that way on Instagram. So you're absolutely crushing it, and I really appreciate you taking the time to be here.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so if you don't mind, because there's going to be people who haven't heard of you, haven't yet seen you on Instagram somehow.
Somehow. How's that possible?
How is that possible? Tell us a little bit about you, the investor, you, the Instagram sensation, and all of the above.
Well, yeah. So I got started really young. Like I was just a kid and my mom owned rental properties. So I was like painting walls and doing all this work, free labor for her. So it was a pretty good deal.
Yeah. How old were you when that was going on?
I was like 8. I was like pretty young.
So your mom was a full out real estate investor?
Yeah, she was. She like kind of got started. She was actually just looking around in our town, like who's like the wealthy people around here. And she just noticed everyone had real estate. So she's like, I'm just going to do this myself. And everyone was against her. Hey, like it was just, I feel so lucky because I have the support from my family and then also like Instagram and the internet, and it's so awesome. But for her, like at that time, it was just like pretty much everyone against her. So she had pretty much no support.
And where were you living at that time?
That was Canmore, Alberta.
Canmore. Okay, so I've had people crying out for a Western guest.
There
so now
you
we
go.
finally
Here
got it. Okay, so you're in Canmore, 8 years old. You're already seeing your mom invest in real estate.
Yeah.
Did you decide that you were going to be a real estate investor at that young of an age?
I always wanted to own property. That was always in the back of my mind. My mom wasn't great with like explaining like the reasons why. She was just like, she's a doer and she's just like, I'm just going to do it and see how it goes. And then, but for me, I always wanted something to bring me that passive income, and I could see that in her property. So I'm like,
at 8 years old, you could see
I don't
this?
know about 8, maybe like in high school. That's when I really started to think about it. But my whole background, like it's kind of crazy too, because my whole story of how I got money to buy my first property, I was actually 6 years old and we were at this office Christmas party and everyone at the party got really bad food poisoning from undercooked turkeys. So kind of disgusting story. But then the insurance payout, I always knew I had that in my bank account, 15 grand.
15 grand.
Yeah. So I'm like, I have to spend this somehow. Yeah. In Saskatchewan it is.
So you, so we haven't said that yet. You're in Saskatchewan and your investing career. What brought you there?
Well, I guess so. My parents are both from Saskatchewan.
Okay.
So I have family in like the smaller communities in Saskatchewan. I'm like, well, I only have like a small amount of money to spend on a property. I didn't really know where else to go, but I did know that there's cheap properties in Saskatchewan. So I'm like,
okay,
it made sense because Alberta and where I was living in the 90s, it was really cheap. Originally in Canmore, it was super cheap to buy property. But then like when I was growing up, it's over $1 million a house. It's just insane.
Man, you should have bought some property there.
I
love Canmore.
It's such a beautiful place.
Oh yeah, and you're like what, 10, 20 minutes to sunshine. Yeah.
I know. I grew up snowboarding. I was so lucky.
Oh yeah, I've been dreaming of going back out there. I was there last year skiing. I miss it. But yeah, so that's awesome. Too bad you didn't buy there. But anyways, you're in Saskatoon now?
Yeah.
Okay. And in all the smaller communities around there?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. And you are buying properties on a credit card because they are so cheap.
So cheap.
Tell me a couple of the recent numbers of purchase prices.
Purchase prices. So last one was $38,000 and it's an awesome property. It has a huge double car garage. So it was built in 2014 and then the house itself. And it's a beautiful like old house with lots of character. So it's a really fun one. And then like I'm renting garage for $250 a month and then the house is $950 a month. So it's like crazy cash flow.
We're going to get into some of those case studies, but just the idea, like you legitimately could buy, you could take a cash advance out on a credit card.
Yeah.
And I think I heard you speak last night and you were saying like 28,000 you had bought a property.
Yeah. 28,000, 40,000, 25,000. It's pretty cheap.
And when did you start buying? What was your first purchase?
First purchase, so that was when I was 18. So my first purchase was $25,000 for a property. So I kind of got almost lucky because I knew the rent. It just made sense to me even at that age. And I have family in these towns too. So I'm like, I felt kind of comfortable. And then I saw my mom doing it. So I'm like, I could do this too. It'll be fine. And I was lucky with my first renter too, because they stayed for, I think 6 years. And then he was just like, I'll fix this, I'll fix that. And just always paid rent. I'm like, landlording's so easy.
Yeah, if you have a good tenant, they can make it seem easy. Well, that's
yeah,
I didn't have it that way, but
it doesn't often start out that way.
Mine was just like 4 or 5 straight nightmares, and then finally, after I learned, hey, I'm gonna have to be a better landlord. Okay, so the first one, was that in Saskatoon as well?
It was outside, so like 4 hours out of Saskatoon.
My goodness, how do you feel comfortable? Let's talk economics, because I know your cash flow is going to be great. We'll get into that. But economics is such a huge thing for me. Like I look at cities, all of my stuff is in London, Ontario, where we've got a diversity of industries, corporate head offices, we've got healthcare, we've got education, big time.
Yeah.
I feel really well hedged in that community, but I'm curious what you see in Saskatchewan. I mean, I think Saskatchewan's probably better than Alberta in terms of diverse industry.
Yeah.
But what do you see?
Well, exactly. I do look for the diverse industry, and like you don't want to rely. There's some towns that you can make awesome cash flow because there's like a potash mine or something like that that's like feeding the town, and there's so many people looking to rent, and you could get crazy rent. But then you're relying on that one mine, and then if that shuts down, then all of a sudden you have no tenants. So I look for towns that have the diverse, like there's railroads, there's potash, agriculture. Like there's a lot of different industry that brings people in.
Yeah. Give me an example. Like what's one of the towns? I think you had an example in Humboldt. Is that a smaller town?
Yeah. Humboldt is about an hour outside of Saskatoon.
Okay.
So it's about 6,000 people.
Okay.
And so, I mean, I have one property in Humboldt, and then there's some in Melville, and they have like a hub for the CN Railroad. So I have a lot of tenants in and out for the railroad. And I don't know, because I'm buying them so cheap. I'm like, they're paid off in 2 years. I always look at the worst case scenario too. Like if all of a sudden I lose, like potash mine disappears, and then all of a sudden I can't get as much rent. I'm like, well, I'm still making money either way. So it's paid off in a few years.
Now, when you say paid off, like do you pay back your mortgage faster?
Well, I don't have mortgages on all of them. Like
some of them are just
free and clear. Well, because you can't even get mortgage. That's the downside to it too, because you can't get mortgages all the time on these really cheap properties. So, I mean, I want to do a portfolio loan because I have now 5 free and clear, and they're just making tons of cash flow. And then, but I want to be able to leverage them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I guess your true worst case scenario is you may actually, like in a worst, and this is speaking from experience. In Ohio, when I was invested down there, I actually had a house that got destroyed, and when I was trying to get rid of it, I was told by my property manager that I would probably have to pay to tear it down and then give it back to the city.
Wow.
That was sort of like the worst case. Now, Canada is so much better than some of those markets in general, just because we have a lot more immigration in general. People are coming to our cities that exist already. So you're kind of a little hedged that way. But you've got yourself a good position where there's a pretty steady population. Like, do you look at that? Are you looking, hey, over the last 30, 40 years, the population has been stagnant or growing? Like, what's okay to you? What's not?
Well, it is very stagnant, and that's the thing. Like, it hasn't been growing, but it's been just stable, you know?
So it's not shrinking either? It's just more or less the same?
Yeah, pretty much. The towns that I invest in, like, it's been really stable. There's some towns that are just like diminishing, kind of going to nothing because there's not a lot around to feed it. And most people are moving to the city, but you know, I try to look for towns that will have more industry to at least support like what I'm. But the good thing too is lots of people are transient in these towns. They're like working at a mine or working at the railroad or something, but they don't want to buy a property. So it allows the house prices to be so low because they don't want to buy. They don't know if they're going to be staying for a long time or not.
I love that. Those are the best kind of tenants because then they can leave and you can increase the rent maybe one day. Although I know you're not really concerned. Yeah. You're not concerned to increase rent.
Not as much as you guys are here. And I know the rules are a little bit different here, but.
I guess they don't need the rules there because no one's really increasing rents.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I love to do? Like I look at a town and I try and think like, will this be here in 100 years? Like what reason do I have it would be or wouldn't be? Like when you said the railway comes through, I mean, that to me is huge because the railway's been around for like 150, 200 years. Yeah. It's not going anywhere tomorrow. Yeah. I look at universities and colleges usually the same way, as long as it's really diverse. Like it's got like a whole bunch of different programs. You know, if you have an Ivy League school, odds are it's still going to be there in a few years. So potash, I'm actually not even familiar with potash. That's for steel production, right?
No, it's actually fertilizer. So
I was way off.
No one knows what it is. I should probably explain.
And you're in like the bread basket, right? They call it. So it's all, you know, farmers and wheat fields and all that.
Exactly.
So you've always got that. The land's there. So there's always going to be people coming maybe for farming support.
Yeah, exactly.
So potash production, tell me a little bit about that if you know.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay. So basically fertilizer production. So you got that out there. I mean, you got no shortage of land.
No, exactly.
Do you know of anything else going on out in Saskatoon or Saskatchewan in general?
Well, it's like the number one tech hub, I guess, in Saskatoon, which I also don't know that much about, but it's like crazy, like the technology coming out of Saskatoon and I don't know. It is interesting. It's like kind of random because you would think of it as just like agriculture and more of that type of industry. But like, there's actually a huge tech community. But that's the reason too, I like to invest in Saskatoon and kind of the bigger centers as well, because I want to diversify my portfolio. Right. I don't want to just put all my eggs in one basket in a small town. Like I want to be able to have other assets that are going to appreciate more in value too. Because I know like the small towns, they're not going to go up crazy. No. Like we can force appreciate it and we buy them so cheap because people are just looking to get rid of their places. So we could buy them super cheap, appreciate it. Like that one for 28,000, I think will be close to 100,000 after we put the renovation in. And really we only spent like 10,000 on the renovation. So
that is just insane.
And it's just like forced through sweat equity because I do a lot of my own work. So that's the benefit.
Absolutely. And we're going to get to that in a second. So and I couldn't agree with you more. Diversifying. One of the things I love about the idea of investing in Saskatchewan is it never had any artificial high. Like I kind of consider what happened in Alberta almost an artificial high because it was so propped up by oil.
So true.
Now where does that leave it, right? Because oil's not doing nearly as well. Whereas you didn't have that, right? So you've had that more stagnant growth. I think Manitoba is fairly similar, but they're probably a little higher priced, I think.
Yeah.
Winnipeg is now sexy. So now we're waiting on Saskatchewan to get there.
There you go.
Okay. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the work you do on the houses, because that's something we can dive into. And for those who don't know, Britt shares her work on Instagram, and it's become very popular. So I'll let you tell the story.
Yeah. So I guess I really got involved with my mom because she didn't have money to pay tradespeople. So it was like just me and my brother like helping her out when we were younger. So I mean, at the time, I probably didn't love it so much. I think it was fun for me a little bit, but I'm also like, I don't know. I really, really started loving it when it was on my own places. And you kind of, I don't know, it's just, I think my background, it was what I knew. I felt comfortable in it. And I was always kind of creative. So in high school, I loved art class and I loved photography and videos. And that's how I got my Instagram involved too. But like just being able to take a really ugly rundown property and turn it into something like cool and a nice place for someone to live, it is just so rewarding for me. And it really is my favorite part about it.
I love that too. Yeah. Just creating something really nice at the end and then having the tenants walk in and be like, whoa, that's so amazing. Or, you know, have it be better than everything else they've seen.
Yeah.
I love it when they say, hey, we saw so many places. Yours was the one that we felt like it was home.
Yeah.
I hear
absolutely.
that.
No.
Yeah. And your stuff is really, really nice. Like it looks like you spent some time on Pinterest.
Yeah. HGTV, Pinterest.
Yeah. So you're doing your research too. You're not just doing the work. Like I can tell there's a lot of thought in the designs, like that backsplash you showed you showed one last night that I thought was very cool.
Yeah.
And those are cheap to do. Why don't you tell us, I mean, because the numbers you were throwing out are insane. Like I'm renovating houses and putting in like 200 grand.
Yeah.
And you are not.
Yeah. Exactly.
So walk me through a recent deal.
A recent deal. So the one we bought for, I guess, a small town deal. So we bought it for $38,000. Okay. We put about $25,000 into it, which is a lot because we had to redo the roof, get a new furnace. So those were kind of like the higher cost. I mean,
and then a full cosmetic reno too?
Cosmetic. So this place was interesting too because it was, the old owners had a fireplace or I don't even know. I think it was a wood burning stove, and they just didn't vent it. So they just let it burn. And the walls and everything was covered in black soot. So like it looked terrifying when you walk through, which is why we got it so cheap, I think. But it was just, everything was covered in black. Like it looked pretty scary. But then it was really cosmetic. Like you just I actually hired someone. I'm trying my best to like hire out things like a little more now so I can scale. But I mean, hired out someone to clean the walls and it didn't cost that much. And then, so I mean, we did a huge cosmetic reno on it and totally turned it around. And
inside and out?
Yeah.
Did you get on the roof and do the shingles too?
I have done shingles. I actually love roofing.
You like roofing?
It's fun.
I've got myself into trouble with roofing.
Yeah.
So when I was a kid, like I was 9, I think 10. I turned 10. Yeah. My parents built a house and they actually let me help shingle. So I have a similar story. So I knew it was possible. My dad was a school teacher, but he built 2 of his own houses in the summers.
Yeah.
Just for our family.
Yeah.
And, I figured, hey, if he could do it, I could probably get into some of this rental stuff. I had never had a reason to be good with tools though. Yeah. Like, I mean, I did help out on my first like kind of more significant reno.
Okay.
And I slept in the house. I gave you a shout out when I was doing my presentation last night.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. No, I'm like, you'd be proud.
I am very proud.
Yeah. So anyways, I think that it's really cool that you're able to do it so cheap. And when you control the whole thing yourself, sure, it goes a little slower, but each deal you do is so much more profitable.
Exactly.
So let's keep going through this one and then we'll get some context on what you've got going as a whole. So you were all in there after reno.
Yeah.
For $63,000.
Yeah.
And what work did you do? Like, are you done this project?
Yeah.
It's done.
Finished.
Okay.
I'm going to have to start posting about it on Instagram soon.
Yeah.
But I hashtag all my properties. So if you go on Instagram, it's hashtag smoke show and then a little house.
Yeah.
So like a little emoji, but then it kind of organizes them. So you can kind of go through and like,
so you can just search the
hashtags.
hashtags.
Yeah.
That's really smart.
Yeah.
And you don't even really need to go to your profile. You can just
exactly.
search it in general.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were doing cosmetics, you cleaned up the walls, probably ripped out all the existing floors, put new ones in.
Well, there's original hardwoods on the main floor.
Okay. So you
kept those. Yeah. I didn't refinish them. They're actually in pretty decent condition, which was really nice.
Yeah.
It was weird. Like, I don't know. Some stuff was in really good condition. Even the baseboards were never painted, which sometimes, like, you know how it is. Someone will paint a baseboard or door 100 times and it just looks like garbage. But like there's a lot of original, like they were all just dirty and gross, but it was really, you just had to clean it. And then I did paint the baseboards and the doors.
You did end up painting them? Yeah.
I did a good job. So
you did a nice
I don't have to deal with it.
And it's so different when it's your place. You're obviously going to just take care of it. And you're not planning to sell these. That's never the intent. It's always to keep them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never sold a property yet.
Oh, beautiful. And how many are you at now?
13.
13 properties. And any of those duplexes or just?
Well, that includes, so I guess, sorry, it's 13 units because some of those are up-down duplexes.
Okay.
Yeah. So 13 units altogether.
Is approximately like 6, 7, 8 properties, something like that?
So we would be at 9.
Okay.
10 properties.
10 properties.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And 3 basement suites.
Okay, and that there was enough cash flow for you to quit your job, which we're gonna get to. Just don't want to get off track on this property. So when you were done, what did you rent this property for?
So this one was the one with the garage. So $250 for the garage and $950 for the house. So we rented them separately.
Wow. Okay, so that's pretty sweet. So you're looking at $1,200 a month total. And did you have a mortgage? No mortgage. So you're just straight up cash flow.
Personal line of credit.
Okay, so you do have interest. So you've got interest on 63,000.
Yeah.
So that's going to affect your cash flow a bit. What is your cash flow after paying that payment?
Oh, now I have to look.
Ballpark.
So I think this one's so new. Like we just rented it this month. So now I'm trying to remember what our actual payments on and the line of credit is weird too. Because when I do my numbers, because it's paid down so quickly, right? Because you're paying 2% of the balance.
Oh, it requires you to pay 2% of balance. Oh my God,
like
that's a bookkeeping nightmare.
Yeah, I know. But my dad's an accountant, so I'm so lucky. He just deals with that. So I think this one we probably will be getting like, okay, with the interest. I wish I had like a more solid number. But we'll probably at least 600 cash flow.
So say 600 conservative.
Yeah.
And then appreciation, you're probably maybe more in the 1% range.
It's not much.
So you're at 63,000 to start, and maybe we'll call it 0.01. Yeah. So another $630 a year for appreciation. I just like to see how the numbers look from province to province. Like what does it look like versus Ontario? I mean, we don't get the cash flow here, but we do get the appreciation.
Exactly.
And the pay down.
Yeah.
And you're also paying down your mortgage here. So I'll call it mortgage pay down. Yeah. Even though it's not technically a mortgage, but you're probably paying off, well, you said 2%. So we'll just call 2% repayment on the 63,000 times 0.02. So in a year, you'll probably pay off about 1,260 on that. And let's sum up all this. Oops, got my spreadsheet going. So about $9,000 return in the first year.
Yeah.
And if your investment is zero, so your return on investment is infinite because you're borrowing the money. Now, of course, you're probably going to want to get a mortgage on there. Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, we want to get it stable. Like, that rental income is really important. So we want to have our leases in place, and then the bank will want to finance us. So, and then we'll pay off that line of credit, and then it's cheaper interest.
So you just keep recycling the money.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of your working capital. And then you'll go back with when the rents are stable. Is that in the next few months for you?
Yeah.
Okay. So. And you mentioned a portfolio loan, which I think is super important as a strategy, because a lot of people don't realize they can do this. Yeah. And then they go rush to find a JV partner.
Exactly.
When you really could talk to your commercial lending department and get them to lend on multiple properties at once. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the problem with cheap properties and financing them, and what you've come up with as a solution. So
I guess like when I first started, I was like trying so hard because I was trying to buy a $40,000 property, and I just could not get financing. No, but I talked to so many different people, and I was like, someone's going to give me something. I know it. So I just kept going, kept asking. And then one, I think it was a BMO representative, but he gave me a personal line of credit. So that's originally how I came across that personal line of credit. Oops, sorry. So he's like, I can't give you a mortgage, but I'll give you this line of credit. And then he said he'd give me $50,000. I'm like, can we up that a little bit? Like, let's see what. And then I'm like, I might have to do renovations, this and that. And he's like, okay, let's do $75,000. And I'm like, yes, because
that is insane. And so he just gave it to you. Like, you were working in your job at the time?
Yeah. So but I just started, and it was a temporary position. So this was my power engineering job that lasted 6 months, and then I never went back.
Yeah.
It was fun. Like, it was good. So I got that line of credit, and then I got a mortgage on another property. So I'm like, this is the best thing.
Now you're rocking and rolling.
So that line of credit has saved me, though. It's been so handy.
That banker must have really liked you.
I know.
Or maybe they do things differently in Saskatchewan.
Well, it's just, I know. And it's so weird because so many people denied me before him. So it's like, you never know what you're going to get if you just keep asking questions.
That's true. Keep trying, keep asking. Talk to a lot of investors because somebody did it, right? Yeah. If I talk to you and now you told me the story, now I'm going to do things differently, and I'll probably be more persistent next time.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're having trouble there. Now you've kind of learned that you can do what's called this portfolio loan. Some people refer to it that way. So you'd work with commercial lending and you would be putting a mortgage on all 5 of them?
That's what I want to do. So I haven't gone that far yet because I actually haven't needed the to leverage them at this point. I was like, I liked the extra cash flow. So, but now I want to get into bigger deals. So I can't wait to leverage those 5. So I'm like kind of in the beginning stages of it. I haven't actually like looked super far into it, but I know it's possible. So
yeah, definitely possible. And I'm sort of at that same point where, so, with residential, eventually they start saying no. Yeah. And what I've noticed is some of the challenges because our rents aren't really comparable to our property values here. So we're getting challenges with debt coverage. Yeah. That you're still I would still have a problem with that if I'm financing it commercially because you have to qualify. But when I work with the residential banks, they don't consider my student rental income. Oh, they only consider like market rent for a family. Oh, really? But students pay more.
Yeah,
so
of course.
If you work on the commercial side, they're more flexible with that stuff. And so I know that's a solution. And then you're unlimited, right? You can buy as many properties as you want.
Yeah.
Are you thinking about buying like more multifamilies now? Is that your next direction?
Yeah, that was like, because I do love like the renovation and side to it. So like, that's what I've been putting offers in on. I put probably 5 offers in on multifamily properties, so apartment buildings and whatever.
Like actual apartment buildings? How many units?
Well, one that I was really, really excited about was 23 units. It had commercial space on the bottom as well, but it didn't end up, it was funny because he walked us around and we're like, this place is perfect. Like the numbers make sense. Everything is great. But then he showed us 6 of the units upstairs and it was an old bank. So it was a really cool building, really solid. And then he showed us around 6 units and they all looked pretty decent, like needed a little bit of work, but nothing crazy. So we put the offer in, it was accepted. Then we went through due diligence and kind of just he took us through the rest of the units and they ended up being like disasters and like no windows in the bedrooms and just like so many like actually scary problems that were liability issues and just electrical everywhere. And so the ones he showed us were great, but then the rest of them were
so you bailed on the deal.
Yeah, so we're like, no, this isn't gonna work. But
what was he asking for it?
1.3 million.
1.3 million in Saskatchewan. That's a lot.
It is.
I mean, that's a lot of units, but that's a big commitment too.
And the apartment, I don't know the market in Saskatoon. It's weird. Like they're being listed at like 4 cap rate. Like it's.
Are you kidding?
4.5. I remember looking at one. I mean, that was kind of crazy.
That's Ontario pricing.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm like, what? But people are buying them, and I'm like,
to fix up. So a rough condition place.
Not really. Like they're
so like
kind
a
of
finished
more,
building. They want a 4 cap on.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, they need a little bit of work, but I mean, I'm looking for value add. I want to add as much value. That's my strategy and that's what I do. And I want to put the work in to increase that value. But like, I don't know, there's only so much you could do to raise rents in some situations.
So in that situation, you look at that building and you're like, well, 6 units are right off. And the ones that are okay, were they ones that you could add value to?
I mean, it was just, that one got to the point where, I mean, that one was a better cap. That was like an 8 cap rate. So that one looked good originally. But I mean, it was we would have had to put way too much money into the renovation. And I don't know, it was so much of a mess. Like it was a disaster because it was just kind of like patched together. It was a bank and then it was whatever kind of different change of use, and then it was like some sort of doctor's office, and then it was just such a weird building. We didn't really want to take it on. Yeah,
it would have been a lot to bite off.
And then at the end of the day, like it was just too much money on purchase to make it worth it.
Well, yeah, that's the other question, right? Because you're going to need probably at least 35% down on something like that in the condition it's in. So would you have been financing it privately, or would you have had a joint venture partner, or did you have all that cash saved up from all your cash flow?
Not quite yet. No, we would have done private money.
Okay,
for the down payment at least.
So you just put down the deposit. You're doing your due diligence. You would have figured out if you're going to move it, and then
didn't end up going through. But now I forgot what I was. Continue. I forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you. So assuming you proceeded, you used the private money. Of course, you've got a pretty heavy burn on that.
Yeah.
So the plan would have been go in, renovate a unit by unit, and then rent it out.
Yeah.
Were they vacant at the time?
A few of them, but
Yeah.
most of them were full.
So you would have started with the vacant ones, filled them up.
Yeah, exactly.
And then once those were done, you would go to the ones that are occupied and evict the tenants so that you could rent or renovate?
Some of them, like if it was really low rent, then we'd kind of start with that and go from there.
Okay.
But then there's other ways, like there's a lot of, I wanted to do like storage in the basement. There's like so much space and laundry. There's only one laundry, I think, and just free laundry. So I wanted to put laundry in there for a little extra income, and then storage.
Okay.
And I don't know, there's a few value add ideas that I did really like. But
Okay. So that's kind of where your head's at. If you find another building, you'll want to do that.
That's kind of what I'm looking for.
Now, a really mature building in Saskatoon that's had tenants in it for like 10, 15 years in one unit, how far out is their market rent? Like how far is it from, like they're paying 800 or I don't know, like 500. Would the rent now be 800?
Yeah, I mean, it is, but it's weird because it like, I feel like it did peak, and then everyone kind of, a lot of these investors who own the apartment buildings, they did kind of the burst strategy, and they raised rents, pulled their money out, and then those raised rents are kind of like, it's been pretty stable. And they built a ton of condos in Saskatoon, and so they really overbuilt on them, and now there's so much available that rents are like kind of like going down. So it's it's like kind of scary, and you don't really, which is why I kind of like the smaller places, because the purchase price is just so much cheaper. But the apartments in Saskatoon, it's just like the sellers want so much because they already took their money out however many years ago. And then, so it makes it a little bit more difficult. So I've been really I'm trying to like contact, not seller, owners directly. So that's kind of been my other strategy, just cold calling, trying to like not go for the listed properties because they're way too expensive for what I want to do.
So in Saskatoon, when you're trying to find, and these are even the individuals, or are you talking multis still?
Multis.
Okay.
But I've also been looking into self-storage. I'm just kind of like figuring it
dabbling.
out. Yeah, I'm dabbling. And because the apartments it sounds really fun to me, and I'm really excited about it because I can see a lot of potential in some of the buildings. But I mean, from what I've seen and the offers I put in, it hasn't really made a lot of sense, but I'm going to keep trying. Like, it's different because it's a new learning curve, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I can feel your pain there, because I was doing so much in London, buying, I had probably in 1 year, I probably bought like 7 or 8 properties, which was a lot for me.
Yeah.
And I eventually slowed down. And in the last year, I actually haven't bought anything.
Yeah.
And I just really haven't liked what the market's done. Like the rents weren't there to justify.
Yeah.
So I didn't really feel like just doing a deal for the sake of doing a deal, right? It's got to make sense.
Yeah.
And I guess I've learned to be uncompromising because I've been irresponsible and reckless in the past, and know what that gets me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So have you had a bad deal?
I feel like I've been really lucky. Like, honestly, I've had nothing. Like, my worst story is that one of my tenants ruined my floors because they had a bunch of pets I didn't know about. And I just did the renovations. I just put the floors down, and then they came in and rented for 6 months or something, and then ruined all the floors, and I had to redo it. It's not a big deal.
So redoing it, you had like vinyl plank or laminate?
Yeah, laminate. So and that was like the worst. And at the time though, I was like, oh, that sucks. I was like so upset. But now that's not a big deal. But like, really, everything's been cash flowing. I haven't had like any. Yeah. I haven't lost money.
Nothing major, right?
Yeah.
So do you build up a base per property? Like tell me about your operations. Do you have like one operating account that you're using for all your properties, or do you have an account for every property? And what kind of cash reserve do you like to have available in case something happens at a property?
Well, I mean, the more cash, the better. But like, we do have, so my partner, Scott, I have a business partner, and he has a personal line of credit also for $65,000. So we like to keep that totally open and for a reserve, and then just our actual bank account with cash in it as well. But that's been so hard for me because I am like in it. I love to be on site and do renovations. And then when it comes to the computer stuff and banking and bookkeeping, I did my bookkeeping for a long time too, and I hate that.
So now your dad does it?
No, my dad does the accounting still.
Accounting.
But I do have a bookkeeper now, which has been really nice. But we do have like everything in one business bank account. So everything's in a corp, and that's kind
so it all runs through your corp? Is your corp own all your properties?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so you right from the beginning you were doing it that way.
Yeah.
Wow, that's smart.
Yeah. Well, I guess not right from the beginning, because I did move some. So it is nice when you could set it up as soon as possible, because like you obviously have to pay the tax if you're transferring title from your personal name to the company. So we've done that, but our properties are so cheap that it's not that big of a deal.
Even paying the tax is no big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. So we have moved like a few, but yeah.
I'm looking at it on mine, and like looking at moving almost $3.2 million of property into a corp.
Yeah,
and that wouldn't be cheap. That'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars. So yeah, not so interested in doing that, but it does change the dynamic of what I can do commercially, financing down the road.
And that's kind of been our strategy too. Like it'll just look better. Like now it's hard because we're taking so much out and putting it into renovations, but like eventually we're going to have like a really solid cash flow coming in. So
do you find that, well, first off, like, do you mind sharing your ballpark cash flow across your portfolio?
Well, so cash flow income is around 8,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's good. Like it will get better too once we pay off our...
And that's something you can live off of comfortably out there, I would assume.
I know. I could live really cheap. I'm like the most frugal person ever. So.
Seriously?
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
So how much do you need to be able to get by? A couple $1,000?
Yeah, nothing.
Live in the van, right?
Yeah, I live in the van.
Tell the story of daily life for you.
Well, honestly, so we'll buy a property sometimes 4 hours away. So my partner Scott is a carpenter and he lives in Saskatoon. So he's working full time. So I'll go out and move to the property. I'll move in and live there pretty much until the renovation is done. So I just wake. It's great. I love it. No commute. Just wake up and get to work.
Wake up and start working.
Pretty much. That's what it looks like. But that's what I like. It's fun.
My first rental, that's what I did. I slept in the property, even in a room where there was no drywall, no vapor barrier. I woke up with the morning dew on my face one time.
That's hilarious.
And then I would pack up and I'd have the workers arrive on site. I'd hear it. I'm like, oh crap, I can't be in bed. So I'm like, fold up my bed and run outside. Oh, hey guys.
Yeah, I totally wasn't sleeping here.
Throw the bed. I had an air mattress and I threw it in the shed.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's funny the things you do when you're kind of determined.
Exactly.
But it gets cold in Saskatoon. And you mentioned that you do occasionally sleep in the van.
Yeah.
You're not really doing that in the winter, are you?
Oh, I have, but it is freezing.
How do you do that? Just have a really warm sleeping bag?
Yeah, pretty much. Winter camping. People do, right?
That's determination.
I'm still alive.
That's determination. So as far as what's the most intense renovation you've had to do?
So probably the last one we did in Saskatoon, which is now an Airbnb property, but we bought that one for $170,000, and I like it. It's like an up and coming neighborhood just close to downtown. So it's kind of like the hipster area where there's a lot of cool shops and everything, but then it's kind of a little ghetto too. So it's that
is the definition of hipster, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So it's cool though, because you can buy them still pretty cheap. So that one I bought $170,000. I think we're all in, oh shoot, I should have got my numbers out, but it was appraised for $350,000.
Okay.
So, and then we put $74,000 into the renovation.
So that's a big reno for you.
It was a big reno. Yeah.
Structural changes?
Just taking down some wall. It actually was a pretty decent layout. So that's one thing I do look for when I'm touring around these properties, because if you're changing everything around, it gets to be a lot, especially when you're DIY. But I took down the wall to the kitchen. It's this tiny crappy kitchen. So I took down the wall and made it this really open concept, and that was really nice. But yeah, otherwise kept the bathroom the same. It was small. Just took a closet out and it made such a huge difference. And then the bedrooms,
So just take out a wall, patch up where the wall was, and then you're good to go. And then everything else is mostly cosmetic at that point.
Are
you doing plumbing? You have, little changes to plumbing if you need to. Are you able to do that kind of thing?
I've done a little bit of that. Yeah. I don't love plumbing though, because if you screw that up, it really sucks, because it causes so much. You gotta have the proper
fall and P-traps and all that.
It can cause a big issue if you don't do it right. So I will usually leave plumbing and electrical. I do little outlet changes and stuff like that for electrical, and change light fixtures and stuff, but I don't like to play around with that too much either, because I'll do everything else, but those are the two that I kind of like to.
So you'll frame in a wall, put your toilets on, put your tubs in, tub surrounds, kitchen cabinets, all that stuff. That's all cool.
Yeah. No, it's fun.
It's mind blowing. It's so rare to find anyone at all that does DIY to the extent that you're doing it. add that you don't find many women doing it at all. So you're probably an inspiration to a lot of people doing that.
Yeah, I know. And I know how intimidating it is for women like to get into construction and trades and all that. I was kind of always surrounded by it. And even when I did my power engineering, it was like me and one other girl, and then the rest of the class was all male. So it's like I was kind of always around it and used to it. But for a lot of people, it is super intimidating. So that's why I love sharing it online too, because like they could see themselves doing it, and it's possible, because you don't see a lot of examples. It's
not at all. I
found.
think probably a big reason why your Instagram took off. And you do a really nice job of doing the time-lapse videos. You've got those down. Well, you'll have to tell me how you do those.
It's fun, and I love to be an example for other women and like other people who do want to get into it, because it's so overwhelming. And one thing I did want to mention too, because I do everything, right? And it's great. It's so overwhelming though if you are new. Like I would say I suggest like do something small, so like get good at paint, because when you walk into a whole renovation and you are not really experienced with it, it's just too much. It's too much to take on. Yeah, it's overwhelming, and I'm sure you felt like that before in the past. And and it's just another learning curve. But I think just like taking it in small chunks is probably the better way to wrap your head around it.
And I might have been different about things. Like maybe I'd be in your position if I was living in Saskatoon and I didn't have the burn of the finances. But I mean, any project I was in, we were in like multiple hundreds of dollars a day in carrying costs.
Exactly.
So it's not like you can take your leisurely time and get it done. And I knew if I was doing all the work, I was going to go slow.
Yeah, for sure.
So in your case, because you don't have that really expensive money in place, I think that makes things different. But I was starting from absolutely nothing, trying to buy properties for over 200 grand when I didn't have anything. So, private financing and push really hard and fast.
Yeah, no, it makes it really tricky when you have that overhead and carrying costs. It's
you got to move fast. And that's a big thing for me. Like when I would go on site, when people wouldn't show up, I'm on the phone. And I started to realize when I was starting to like frame a wall or do anything like that, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm like 10 times slower than anyone else at this.
Exactly.
And it got frustrating. So I'm like, I need to put the tools down and pick up my phone. So I would just go on site. I would stare at people, make sure they were working.
Yeah, exactly.
And I would just be on my phone all day, calling people to come to site on that first one. And fortunately, after that experience, I started to build up some reliable contacts that would come back for me. And that it all kind of went from there.
Yeah, exactly. And if you want to scale, you have to do that. And that's what I've been struggling with too, because I'm so hands-on with everything. And that's like what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with. But I want to scale, and I can't do everything myself all the time. So I'm like in the phase of like trying to hire more out. But at the same time, I enjoy it and I love sharing it online. So I will always want to be involved in it in some way. But I also want to be able to do multiple projects at once and not have to be doing everything myself.
What is the end game?
Oh, that's a hard question. It's always, so I really, for me, my biggest motivation, I guess, is time freedom. Like, and not to just sit around and do nothing, because I'll always be doing something, but just like have a comfortable amount of money I can like take, like go on vacation and do something cool, and like have my business running and growing as I'm away, and like just try, because I'm a huge backpacker. Like I love traveling and all that fun stuff. So I don't know, that's always kind of what I envision, but I'm always going to be a hard worker. I don't think that's ever going to go away.
Well, no one can just sit around. Maybe some people can. I can't. I want to always be doing something, growing. I think that's human nature. You want to do something better. I see that in you too. Like you've done this. You're like, okay, well now how do I do bigger? Even though what you're doing is perfectly fine and you can just keep doing it. And
I feel like that, that feeling never actually goes away.
You'll like, always want to just keep upping it.
Oh, and it's crazy. Like the more, like the people that I've met recently going to these investor summits and everything, like high level people. And then they're always looking for that next step too. And I'm like, I don't think this feeling's ever going to go away. So
no, I don't think so. But I mean, if you had like a 20,000 a month cash flow and your property manager could take care of things. Do you have a property manager?
Not yet, but I am looking into that.
Hypothetical property manager is looking over. Yeah, exactly. You would go on vacation where? Where would you be going?
Oh man, like that's a good question. I've been to almost every continent now, and I've been to 32 countries, and I just done a lot of backpacking in my early 20s, and that's so it's kind of funny because I took my obsession for like the traveling, and now it's like kind of fallen more into real estate. So I'm like really involved in all my properties and everything, and I haven't been able to get away so much. But I love, like, I went to South Africa and did like safaris, and I love that sort of stuff.
So
I love
cool.
being with the animals, and like I'm a thrill seeker too, so I like love the skydiving and bungee jumping.
You did skydiving?
Shark cage diving.
Wow. Okay, so you've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's fun. So like I kind of want to incorporate both of those worlds. So
It's amazing to me the time freedom you have. Like you're doing all these projects. You don't need to be at this point. You could make it work. You could just travel. I mean, technically you could retire now.
Yeah. And you could travel so cheap too. Like it doesn't cost a lot of money. If you're going to Southeast Asia, like you could live on, I was paying $1 a night for a hostel in Cambodia, like $1 a night. So it's like you could live there cheaper than you could live in Canada and still be growing your business overseas.
Can you let my wife know?
Yeah. I'll tell her.
You can travel cheap.
Yeah.
She has not figured that out yet.
No. I'll teach her.
We have to limit the travel a bit. Yeah, I would love that. So I do have a few more things that I really think are just good for context. So one, you finished your high school, you went and did some post-secondary?
So I took a power engineering course. So I took a bit of time off to kind of figure out what I wanted to do. So that's when I did like some backpacking and traveling. Okay. So I was always a server, and I had multiple serving jobs, and which was awesome. I love jobs that are like commission based, and I could actually make money and tips if I work like really hard getting tables.
If you do a good job.
Yeah, do a good job. So those have always been my favorite jobs. And so I always had like 4 serving jobs at a time, just like hustling, and I always loved it. And I don't know, I think it's cool to be in the service industry too, because you learn how to talk to people and be personable, and I think that's helped me in my investment career too.
Okay.
Yeah, so I always did that, and then I took my power engineering course. So that was a 6-month course. Okay. But I tried really hard to get good grades in high school too. So I actually got like my schooling paid for through.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So you had a scholarship.
I'm like,
yeah. So you 6 months in the course and then 6 months on the job, and you were done.
And then I was done.
And then you're a full-time real estate investor. Wow, that's inspiring. So at what age were you full-time real estate investor?
So I would have been 25.
Okay, so if we all move to Saskatoon, we might be able to do it a little quicker.
Yeah, exactly. And it has been such a huge benefit because like I have family in Saskatoon, but like it's not where I'm from. So like making the move out there was just huge for me because I was able to invest full time in real estate, and it kind of worked out.
It's incredible. So I want to shift gears a little bit into the social media side of things. What is the best thing you've seen come of your active involvement on Instagram or any other social?
Well, social has been huge for me. And I think like, oh man, I can't even believe the people I've been able to talk to. And I just had like Scott McGilvery just pick me up from the airport, and like we had coffee and like hung out, and he's like been an idol of mine. And it's through Instagram, like just being able to talk to these people and Bigger Pockets people. Like I ended up getting on the Bigger Pockets podcast, which has been awesome. And it's just more contacts. And I feel like when I do get to the point where I need to raise money, like there's a lot of people that have kind of built a trust with me because they like have seen me work. They see me hustle every single day, and that's through Instagram stories and posts and everything. So it's like really been huge for me for leverage and credibility.
Oh yeah, I can imagine there's a lot of wallets ready to open when the time comes. Yeah, when you figure that opportunity out.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you do? What is your approach with the haters? Because we all know that they come. They do exist. Although I've been fortunate. I mean, I haven't really seen much of it.
Yeah.
I've stood up to them. That's been my approach, and I've challenged them, and I've pretty much have a 100% they back down rate. Yeah. But that's probably a waste of my energy. So I'm curious what your approach is.
Well, I guess like I really haven't had most people are amazing, super supportive. Yeah. I've definitely had some pretty bad haters, which is fine because it comes with it, right? Like you're putting yourself out there. You can't expect everyone to love you, right? Like there's going to be like back and that's kind of what you want. Like it's not always going to be positive, and that's fine because actually some of it I do try to take as feedback, even if it's like they're being rude and whatever. Like I try to like use it to benefit me in some way if I can. Some of it's just straight like ridiculous, but it's funny because sometimes I will take a hater message or comment, I guess, and share it to my story. I've done that before to call them out because it's just like so rude. I'm like, well, you're putting this on my page, so I'll put it on my. And it's a weird thing because And I kind of said I would step away and not do that anymore. But it's actually insane the amount of messages that come through just of like support. And like everyone's just so awesome. And I don't know, like it's weird how much traction that kind of gets. But I think like just putting it out there too, because in the beginning, that would have really upset me. It doesn't bother me at all anymore. But I think people who are starting to put themselves out there, like me in the beginning, that sort of thing would bother me. And I think about it for a week later. Like it would just really get in my head. But now it's like, I want to be able to help people through that kind of beginning phase that I was at. So that's kind of a reason I share it too. I'm like, you know what, this happens to everybody. And it's going to happen if you put yourself out there online. It's just...
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think, you know, the objective me, when I can actually step back, you know, I'm not saying things don't occasionally irk me in the moment, but if I can step back and say, well, would a reasonable person have ever approached this way if they had a problem with me? Like, you know, and it's usually more a reflection of them than it is, you know, anything about you or I or anything like that.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, and it's the internet. It's
the internet. People hide behind the keyboard.
Yeah. They're really brave.
My response is usually very easy for you hiding behind a keyboard and a fake name to criticize.
And that actually is insane. Like the really bad comments that I've gotten, I go to their page and they have like 0 followers following 0, and they're just straight up trolls. It's just like trolls. It's like, well, I mean, maybe it's fun for them. They're like, this is hilarious, pissing people off, but you know,
not worth spending too much time thinking about.
And they have a lot of time on their hands, obviously. So it's just kind of
not worth spending too much time thinking about for sure. So just kind of some final thoughts regarding the renovations, being somebody who just crushes renovations and crushes investing and understands both. Where would you suggest, you know, somebody getting started, or even somebody who's done a couple of renos and maybe the numbers aren't working for them? What are some things that you could suggest to them that they might be able to help make their numbers work?
Yeah, I mean, through renovations, there are a lot of ways to cut costs down. Like if you could do your own flooring and maybe like the trim work, like that's kind of an easy job. And there's kind of room for error with flooring because it doesn't cost a lot. If you screw up a cut on one piece of laminate flooring, like it's one board out, or you can use it in another spot. So you can like, I think that's a really great way to start, because there, and you have like the 1/4 inch gap around the perimeter. So you have like that room and where you would put the baseboard, and it's like, you kind of have a little bit of room there to like practice. And then, I don't know, it's a great way to start. And then painting, and I love tiling and backsplashes, but just like 2 small projects at once.
So pick some little ones and then kind of grow it if you feel like you're in line.
Yeah, and you can save so much money that way if you Yeah.
And I think you use like IKEA cabinets.
Oh yeah. So IKEA cabinets, that's our go-to for our rental properties. They actually are really cheap and they're not that hard to put together.
Once you know, right?
Yeah.
You get a system, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Everything's systems.
It is. Yeah. And it's just a learning curve at first, but it saved me so much money in the end. And it really is fun. Like after you kind of get through that initial phase of trying to learn how to do all that stuff. But subway tile, shiplap, like I use a lot of that, and they're super inexpensive, but it comes across really nice. And also just using paint, like do a nice feature wall with paint, and that'll increase the value, and it costs you like $50 a can of paint. So it's little things like that do really make a big difference.
And those will help you rent them, right?
Yeah,
like
and
if you
stands out. Yeah,
because I've seen your Insta posts, and it doesn't look like you had to spend that much money, but you made it look really nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Is there something you'd recommend people spend the money on, like one kind of area in the house? Or
I think doing a really nice feature wall makes a big difference, and then a tile backsplash, because a lot of rental properties might not have that, but it makes a huge impact, and it doesn't cost a lot of money.
I've always thought that too.
Yeah.
Tile's so cheap, but for some reason people just don't do it. I'm like, it protects your wall. Yeah. It looks good.
It's beautiful.
Just do it. Okay. So Britt, if people want to reach you, follow your story, what's the best way for them to do that?
Probably Instagram is the best way to reach me. So at investorgirlbritt. So that's where I spend.
So they can send you a DM on there if they want to reach out.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. And any other piece of wisdom you'd like to give to our viewers, listeners, before we wrap up?
Well, I guess just like, you're always going to have so many questions. I just remember at the beginning, I just had endless questions, and I wanted to know all the answers, and I wanted someone to just like almost hold my hand and like tell me what to do. But like, it really just is getting involved. And like, for me, it's just being hands-on and getting in there and getting my hands dirty and figuring it out as I go along, because you're never going to have all the answers.
Yeah. So just sometimes you got to take action.
Yeah, just take action. I think that's the key to everything. It's just, that's what you have to do.
Would you recommend people research the Saskatchewan market?
Yeah, I think that's a good opportunity there.
You kind of got me wanting to. It's just distance. I'm not a big distance investor, but I got to get over that. That's one of those things I got to get over.
Exactly.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. This is really cool. And I'm sure my listeners and viewers are going to appreciate having somebody from a little bit further west in Canada talk about real estate.
Oh, it was fun talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching today's episode. Just a friendly reminder to please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure that you smash the like and subscribe and notification bell. And also leave a comment. And hey, while you're at it, why not share this episode with somebody you think it could help? It helps this podcast grow, and I would really appreciate it. Thanks again. We'll see you on the next episode.